Morning.
Morning.
As I walked through the door, I was reminded of a wonderful chap who many of you will remember, called Ivor, who used to do critiques of people preaching. When I say critiques, I still have the 3 sides of A4. This very gracious man. It is lovely to see you all. This is such a special place in the south, and so many others. There are some older faces here. I think it says something testament to us being saying that this church isn't just the people, it's part of the church, the people here, it's all of us who are out there. Because, as it says, you remember your teachers. You know, I have vivid memories of Jeff with a chainsaw in the middle of this, and so many other things going on here. But we've also been part of, we've been hearing news, and I look around the room and I see people who've been carrying, who've had challenges, loss, joys, celebrations. So I just want to say that we've been praying with you guys and feel very much part of this. So on Saturday, 2 weeks ago, a group of men were allowed by their wives to leave Crowborough for the day and go to visit National Gallery. So we had a men's trip up to see the paintings. And we had with us a guy who was studied art at uni, so he was deep into the history of art and painting techniques and so on. And we sailed into the gallery thinking we'll make use of his expertise. We raced past a couple of paintings. I like them, but I've got my favourites. And he pulled us back. We glanced at this picture, and it was lovely. And he pulled us back and he said, "Just stand for a while and gaze." And as we gazed, we looked at the beauty of cloaks and gowns, the design, the folds, the shade, why people have been placed in certain positions, the painting techniques. And of course, if those of you like Impressionist paintings, when you spend time lingering and gazing, you see all these disparate brush strokes that reflect the colour, the speed, the light intensity. I mean, it was standing for a while and looking at them. Can you recall a landscape or sunset that caused you to linger, to spend a while, to gaze, and not just to glance? I was reflecting, actually, Jeff and Sally, we remember that time in Skye, and when we sat on a cliff edge. It probably was a hill, but it felt like a cliff edge. Until hunger overtook us, we just gazed onto the Culin, the mountains. I will remember that, and I'm just thinking I'm there now. We just stopped and stayed. We might have taken a photo, but it was actually just gazing. And a little while ago, we were looking at the night sky, and I'm sure it happened around here, but we had the joy of the Northern Lights. Who needs to go to northern Norway and Iceland? And we stayed ridiculously into middle morning hours, whatever, just gazing at the sky. Do you know, it's not called star gazing for anything. It's called for a particular purpose. It's not star glancing, is it? But sometimes in the world that we're in, there doesn't seem to be enough time, does there, to gaze at things, or even glance. There's more information, more things coming in, more photos on our phones that we can possibly look at for any period of time. So if anyone hasn't grasped what my topic is, then they might as well go now. Someone go, yes! I'm going to read first few verses from Psalm 27. And you can see, like anyone who's getting older, I'm seeing how far I can get before I put my glasses on. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. One thing I ask of the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent. and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. The context, I think most of us, if not all, would be familiar of the life that David had. I love David because he's flawed, like Churchill and all the others. I mean, he did terrible wrongs in his life. He had other issues going on. He went through what we went through, and yet there was something, as we see, about his heart that said exactly why the Lord would want him to have played the part that he did. But it gives me confidence that actually we can be loved by God in that way. So his background, he was going through terrible, terrible times. Rejection, mental anguish, anxiety, threats to his physical safety, false accusations, rejection, loneliness. Anything else have I missed? I think that was about enough. Ever gone through any of those? Still go through those? Possibly go through next week? Yeah. But in the midst of all these struggles, what would our response be? I was reflecting on this, and I found this topic challenging to prepare as I was focusing again on it yesterday, because it shows me that I'm not perhaps where I should be at times. In fact, quite a lot of the time. So I hold my hand up that I'm speaking to myself now, so you can fall asleep and whatever. But in the midst of troubles, I think imagine there are trees in the forest, I'd be asking for the trees to be moved out so that I then can focus on God. God, just help me with this, help me with that, and then so I can place my full focus on you. I think I've got so many things that I would be asking God for. What does David do? In the midst of all of this, he puts God at the center. The first thing he does is to put God at the center. He was seeking a God-centered life. One thing I seek, one thing I ask, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord and gaze, not glance, at his beauty. It is a challenge of keeping things centered. I don't know about you, but when I was thinking about this, two things came to mind. Particularly relevant here is IKEA, and the other is weasels. IKEA. I think I've gone through some of the most painful times of my life shopping in IKEA, and normally the one that just ran the North Circular from here. So it would go, when we lived here, yeah, we need this thing. This is the thing. I'm going, no, we don't need it. Yes, this is the thing we need to get, and only IKEA have it. And you know what I'm going to say? You go into IKEA with that in mind. That's what you're going to get. No. Snakes and ladders. You try and take a shortcut and you end up further back than you were before. And meanwhile, yeah, don't you know, in the trolley, oh, look at this. If I see that tea towel that's been, or the whatever thing you don't need that looks brilliant, 14 times it's around before you ever, and we lost complete sight of what we came there for. I ended up with a trolley load of stuff, and of course by the time you get there it's not in stock anyway, so the analogy doesn't work, or bits of it are. But I come out with so much more stuff that I ever went in for, and I lose sight of it. Weasels. If you have ever been bitten by a weasel, in fact I know you haven't, because if you had, it would still be here, because it wouldn't be letting go. Weasels, I was surprised at, when they bite, when they grab hold of something, they stick to it. Even though it may cause them whatever, come what may, they will hang on, they will dangle. So whatever they go for, they hold on to it. I see no weasels around. Looking at being God-centered, focusing and holding on to something, I came across this quote that I couldn't summarize any better than it is. What is your one necessity? What is the one thing above all things that you must desire? What is the one thing that weasel-like you will want to grasp with all your might and dangle from wherever it may take you? What is the one thing above all things you most want to live for? One thing I ask, one thing I seek, that I may gaze upon the beauty of the Lord. and spend time with him. In a difficult, challenging world with full of so much stuff, to-do lists that you don't even have time to do a to-do list anymore, do we? But there are just stuff and things coming in. It can be very difficult to centre ourselves first and then move out, because the temptation is to get the things done in the morning, with this and that, before we actually get back. And then we can spend some time focused on the Lord. I know I'm speaking to people, many of whom do this, so I should be speaking to myself, but I'm challenged by it. What's the outcome if we're not centred? Well, that quote continues, a life with no centre is an uncentered life. Yeah. It is a life without focus and meaningful direction. And many people are living uncentered lives, wandering aimlessly through their days, pursuing first this thing and then that. I don't think we're talking about ourselves, but I suspect we have parts of our life that might feel like that. Others are living with other things, lesser things, at the centre of life, and are living lesser lives as a consequence, falling short of their God-ordained best, because a person's life will only rise to the level of the thing or things that a person desires most of the time. There's something, I love riding motorbikes, and there's something called fixation, which if you're riding around a corner and you come off, often the accident report would go, actually it was a case of fixation. You need to focus on where you're going to go. Quite often, if the bike is going in a slightly different direction, if you focus on that direction, you've lost it. You have to focus on where you're going. Whether you're driving as well, the best drivers focus on where they want to end up, not on where they're travelling. We end up where our eyes are fixed. We end up where our heart is fixed. I better remember that next time I'm riding. Paul says the similar thing. It comes from a position of difficulties and trials. In Colossians, he says, "Since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things." In gazing, not glancing, in going for the one thing in his heart, David was setting his head, as he says in verse 5, above his enemies. What does that mean? It's not a stork, it's not a giraffe, he's not sitting on higher ground. What it meant was, I think, that he was able, it gave him greater resilience, it gave him greater peace, it gave him greater strength to cope with the challenges. It gave him a different mindset, because he was still pursuing the one thing that he was seeking. He was gazing upon the Lord and not glancing. And what was David wanting to glance at? Well, it says in that passage, the beauty of the Lord. I think if we look at ourselves in the mirror, what beauty are we gazing at? Sometimes this world says it looks at it as a superficial beauty. It's when you wake up in the morning and go, is the world ready for this? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, every now and again, right? But it's not a superficial beauty, is it? It's God's character, his love, his grace. Psalm 110 verse 3 says, his holiness is his beauty. Zechariah 9:17, his goodness is his beauty. So when we gaze and not glance at the beauty of the Lord, we are spending time with our one desire. Gazing, not glancing. And it's not just a me and a God thing. As we look on the beauty of the Lord, as we spend time in that place and one thing we desire most, we're looking at his character, his beauty, his love. And in a little while, there's a song we sang last week at our church, and the chorus struck me, and Ian will be leading us, and Jonathan later, when I finished. The chorus said this: open up my eyes in wonder, gazing, and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart. I love it when people say, and here's the thing. You ever had that conversation where people say, and the thing is? And they go, no, the thing is, here's the thing. Well, here's the thing is, and lead me in your love to those around me. Lead me in your love to those around me. So by spending time, the one thing I seek, I want to spend time gazing on the Lord. That's just about you. Because when I gaze, it isn't, is it? When I gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, not glance, I see his beauty, I see his love, I see he for who he is. And that enables me to be the witness, Matthew 28, to go out and be the witness. So it's putting God at the centre and not after. One thing I seek, one thing I ask. So, a few reflections and challenges for me. And if you want to join, sort of take up the challenge and see it's relevant to you, that's fine. But, yeah. If God asked us that question, what's the one thing? What's the one thing that you would want? The one thing, the burning priority. What would your answer be? When I first thought about that, I had something in mind that it would be really good to get sorted. That's not wrong, but it says, what's the one thing above all that, right? So earnestly desire. For some of us, we are there, and that's to be celebrated. I think, I delivered a course recently, and someone was saying, well, I'm not sure if I really need to be covering this or that. And I said, well, look, I think this is a course to celebrate what you do well and what, to be reminded of the things that we are practicing in our lives. And fantastic, because there are people here that do put God at the centre, that are gazing, not glancing, that actually watch for that 1 degree of shift. The 1 degree on a railway line or an airplane flight, if there's 1 degree of shift from that plane kicking off from airport here in Heathrow and going over to London, it will be hundreds and hundreds of miles apart, just 1 degree out. So our lives might just be 1 degree. So it can be a little shift. And if God is nudging us, you know what, that's okay. He's nudging us in love, not in condemnation. Do we glance at heaven and reserve our gazing? I nearly said grazing because that appeared on the original sermon topic. Do we glance at heaven and reserve our gazing for the things of this earth? Do we glance at heaven and reserve our gazing for the things of this earth? I think it was here when I first heard someone, or when I was sent on a course by the elders for a year up into London. Anyway, well, whatever, but it was around the time. I've mentioned it whilst I've been here, so forgive me for mentioning it again, but we need to stop treating earth as the main course and heaven as the dessert. We need to stop treating heaven as the main course. Earth as the main course and heaven as the dessert. Turn it around. This is the starter. And yet, do we live our lives? Do I live my life as if actually this is the main course? How tightly do I cling on to all things? The things that are precious to me. And that's people as well as material things. And actually in my own life, as I get older, and we were talking about, we've just been on holiday where we did loads of physical activity, but there'll be a time when we can't. And we all know, that's a challenge. And I think there's a message here to say, hold on to the things of earth less tightly, a little bit more lightly. The one thing I ask, one thing I seek, is to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord. And that's a hope. Actually, it's not just a hope that we will see the Lord, that we'll spend time. I was preaching in Kefalonia. We've got friends who run a church in Kefalonia, and it's for holiday makers and some and expats and that kind of stuff. And also we had some Greek Orthodox. Now they give you a hard time because they don't really like Europeans speaking about, or other Europeans speaking about the Bible. Some of them feel that they've got it right, they've got the understanding. But I was okay because I'd used the word hope, and I discovered that the way we use hope is to say, I hope the M25 closure is not going to make a journey. I hope England play some decent attacking football this evening and win. I hope this, I hope that. It's hopeful. I hope it doesn't rain. I hope this. The hope in Scripture is more certain than that. That's where the Greek Orthodox have got it right. It's a certainty. It's not a hopefulness. So it's something where the language probably has taken us apart. And finally, I'm reminded of a song. And in fact, it was in the books here, and it was misspelt. And instead of saying strangely, it said strangly. So I've always sung it in that way. Gosh, so we do take things with us, don't we? Yeah. In times of celebration, joy, loss and difficulty, let's seek to gaze. And I'm reminded of the words of the song that was sung so often in this place. As we gaze upon his beauty, the things on earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. The things on earth will grow strangely dim if we put God at the centre. Put God first. One thing I ask, one thing I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord and gaze. So if you go away with nothing else, gazing, not glancing. Gazing, not glancing. Thank you.